This video is part 2 about poverty. It says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Proverbs 31, 8-9. And I want to speak up about poor and poverty, or below poverty. To be poor does not mean that a person has lost their value, their worth. To be poor does not mean that a person does not have dignity. To be poor does not mean that a person has lost their rights to complain or to file a complaint if their human rights as a person has been violated. To be poor does not mean that a person should not have anything of value. To be poor does not mean that a person should be happy with anything and everything. I'll say it again. To be poor does not mean that a person should be happy with anything and everything. To be poor does not mean that a person should not strive for more. To be poor does not mean that a person should not strive for the best. To be poor does not mean that a person should feel privileged to have anything or to be part of this great nation. When you are poor, national pride has nothing to offer you. When you are poor, feeling privileged is a sin. You want to have the privilege to not be poor. And I'll repeat it again. You want to have the privilege to not be poor. Within a great nation, even if poverty or boredom may be better at a great nation, poverty is poverty. It has nothing a poor person should feel privileged about. It has nothing a poor person should feel privileged about. This is about the life of a poor person. If middle-class persons, such as educated, degree-acquired people, have a hard time at finding decent jobs, how does the process work for a poor person? A person who lives in a shelter, a person who hangs out with their personal items, such as at the Bo Diddley, a person who has very little to no connections to those who could help them, such as people who could give them references for a job. If a person does not have a job, yes, it is best that a person be poor at a privileged nation, where access to basic life necessities and a level of decency can be met. A level of decency can be met, not all. Poor person doesn't have full decency being met. I don't know if everybody knows that. Who would be privileged to be poor? Poor people in poor nations flee on boats to risk their lives to be away from poverty. Risking their lives not to be mocked by people who see that they ought to feel privileged to be poor at a great nation, or feel privileged to have anything within a great nation. People die, others make it. For another level of poverty? No, my friends. A person who has ever tasted the bitter cup of what it is to be poor will never feel privileged to be one in a poor nation and even within a great one. In the U.S., human trafficking, drug selling, drive-by shootings, etc. takes place at a great nation. Imagine that times 2 at a poor nation. Yeah, yet if you have a heart truly working in you, of love truly working in you, listen, you'll see that even in the forced to one of the greatest, selling your body, selling drugs, dealing with circumstances that has great possibilities and probabilities of ending your life short, is not a privilege. Being poor has nothing to do with privilege, or coming from a poor anything to having something has nothing to do with privilege. That's another matter. A privilege is anywhere where any person gets to live their lives to the fullest. You hear that? That's a privilege. Where you can live your life to the fullest. Even better, with ease. Get there. To realize their dreams to the fullest. To be what they want to be. To utilize their God-given talents to their heart's desires. To live great, productive, and fruitful, marvelous, glorious, honorable, noble lives. That is privilege. If you do not even have to work for it, if it's given to you. That is a privilege, to feel free to do these things, to feel free to be great, to feel free to be productive and fruitful, to feel free, not forced. That's a privilege. Whether such a life is granted within the poorest or the wealthiest nation, that is privilege. That is what you would call privileged life. Ease, comfort. That's privilege. If you work hard for something, you strive within, poor, rich, whatever, that is earned. It is not to be treated with decency. That's not a privilege. That's a human right. To complain, that's a human right. To say, ouch, something hurts, that's a human right. You have a right to complain. You have a right to say something when something's wrong. That's a right. That's a human right. It's not a privilege. Haitians deserve to speak up if they're not happy about something, risking, who has risked their lives. I didn't have to do that. You wouldn't know that. If you know that, most people who think I'm Haitian just think that, I had to risk my life. Well, let's just say I risked my life coming here. It wouldn't be a privilege to live in poverty. It wouldn't be. Put yourself in my position. Would you be privileged to be poor at a great nation? That's a shame. It's not a privilege. It's a shame. A damn shame. And that's what I had to say. And that's for everybody. That's for everybody.